G'day, Neil will Fix It here, and today we're going to be talking about car brakes, and in particular brakes and pads, or rotors some would call it. Today I'm going to be talking about how you can identify issues with your brakes. Maybe you're going to look at a new car and you want to check that the brakes are okay, or you have a car and you want to check them because maybe they're not feeling quite right, or you just want to check them for safety. We're going to run through the common issues with brakes, what you can look out for, how you can actually identify your type of brakes. We're doing a brake pad change on a car today. So let's get into it. So first of all, let's look at how you can actually visually check your brakes and then identify the type of brakes that you have. So I'm going to be working on this car today. I've identified that the rear brakes, the rear pads on this car are a little bit low, so I'm going to be changing those. I'm going to talk you at how to do that yourself. But first of all, let's look at how to actually check your brakes visually if you can see them. So a lot of the time you can actually look through the wheels and we can see through these gaps and you can actually see the brakes. So this is part of the brake, that's the brake, and then there's also the brakes. So this is a disc brake type. Let me get you in here to actually have a look. So you can actually see through the wheel, and then we can actually see a metal disc. That is the rotor or the disc brake as such. And then down here, this is our brake pads. So within this metal housing, there is brake pads in there, and they are what actually grip the disc.
Modern disc brakes use friction. Calipers push pads against the rotor. This friction slows the vehicle, stopping it completely.
So if we come to the front here again, we can see the same thing. We can see through the hole in the wheel. We've got a metal disc, and then we've also got the brake pads here. So that right there is a brake pad. This is what is called a caliper. So that part is actually what clamps the pads together. So as we saw in the video, we've got the disc going round and round, and when we put our foot on the pedal of the brakes, this caliper squeezes those pads together and slows that disc down. So there's a pad this side and a pad the other side of this disc, and that's going to slow down when we put our foot on the pedal. So what we're looking for when we look through here is that this disc is in reasonable condition, and that means it has plenty of thickness to it. It doesn't have very large lips on it, so edges. So when the brake pads, you can actually see the shiny part of the disc is what the brake pad actually sits on and causes friction on. And then on the outside, you have a little bit of outer edge wear, which indicates sort of how much the disc is worn. You can measure these. There is an actual specific measurement that these are allowed to wear down to. But for a general visualization and visual check, you can tell by making sure there's not too much of a sharp edge, sort of a lip, should we say. And then when we're looking through to the brake pad, we're looking for how much meat is left on it. So these have a metal plate and then a friction material, and it's the friction material we need to see. It is quite difficult to actually see it physically sometimes, but you can also kind of tell by this little plate here. So when they're new, they start near the edge, and then as they wear, they move closer and closer towards the disc. And I'd say these are probably about halfway. And then these ones at the back, I noticed that this car was starting to make a noise. So these actually have a little wear indicator. I'm going to show you that when I get to actually dismantling it. But they've actually started to rub on the disc itself. So that's that little groove mark. So that's why we're going to change those. There's still meat on the pad itself, and that's telling us that it needs to be changed very soon, and these aren't going to make it to the next service. So that's why we're going to do these today. Let's have a look at this car over here. Nice big wheels. Yeah, so there's a really clear picture. So there's our disc, There's our pads and our caliper and our carrier. So the bigger the hole in the wheel, the better. When it gets a little bit tricky is when you have wheels like this. So not much of a hole at all to look through. Probably need a little torch and have a look through, or you can stick your head around on the other side and sometimes you can see, but this has got a backing plate and everything, so not much use. So that's a little bit trickier. And then again on something like this, you can see them. I can see the disc and I can just about see the pad. That's not too bad. Not too bad, just to get a visual inspection. And then there's another type of brake which is common on older cars and particularly the rear wheel. So this is an older small car. It's what's called a drum brake. So it doesn't have a disc and a pad. It has brake shoes with inside a metal housing. So that's what this is. So don't get confused between disc brakes and drum brakes. So if you have a look through your wheels and you see something a little bit like that, you can't see any disc brake and you can't see any pad, then it could well be that it's a drum brake. And to inspect those, you actually have to take the wheel off, take that apart. Today we're going to focus on discs and pads. Let's do one more. What we got? We got a Land Rover here. There's our disc. They look nice and new. There's our brake pad and our caliper. And then same again on the back. Big disc on this one. So here we have an example of, we can see that it's worn a bit. The pads are okay on that one, but yeah. So that is how we can identify just by looking. So if you're inspecting a car or you want to inspect your own car, one of the first things to do is to actually check the brake to drive it. So if you haven't driven it already, if it's a car that you're looking at, then that's something to do. Check that the brakes feel okay. And then another thing to do is to check that the pedal feels good. So the brake pedal, with the engine running, we should be able to put our foot on the pedal and the brake pedal doesn't go down, so it should remain nice and solid. So when we put our foot on the brake, it doesn't go too far to the floor either. We don't want it to go all the way to the bottom. We want it to feel nice and firm and that it doesn't sink. So if you find that the brake pedal is sinking with the engine running and your foot on it, not too much pressure, just normal braking pressure. If you're finding that you're putting your foot on it and it's going down and down and down, that could indicate a problem. It could be that the brake fluid is really old. It could be that there's air within the brake fluid, or it could be that one of the seals within the hydraulic braking system is actually leaking. It's bypassing, so it's losing pressure. We want to check that pedal. We want to check that the pedal feels good and that there's no noises when we put our foot on the brake. If you get a noise, sort of metallic or rotational, when you're putting your foot on the brake, then it could be that the pads are getting pretty low or wear indicator is getting down to the metal. So that's another thing to check. And another thing that's quite common on cars is brake judder or shudder. But when you're braking, you get this kind of vibration or hesitation or sort of pulsing either through the pedal. You might be able to feel it through your foot, or you can feel the actual car, particularly when you're coming to a stop or when you're going quite slow. Some cars it's quite common, they're kind of prone to it, but what it is when the disc brake, it needs to have a flat surface for those pads to work nice and smoothly. If they get overheated at any point, or if they get too low, the metal itself of the disc brake can warp. That's when you tend to get a brake judder or a shudder. It's not a major deal, it just means that the brake discs or rotors will either need replacing or machining. So machining is when they still have enough metal on them to be able to make them smooth again. That's kind of the main diagnostics of brakes. So drive it, feel it, check your brake pedal, and then a visual inspection. And if all of those kind of tick the boxes, then your brakes are probably okay, especially if you can see plenty of meat on the disc, plenty of life left in the disc, and plenty of life left in the pad. A little bit more difficult if you can't see the brakes themselves, but it gives you a general idea of whether your brakes are safe and they'll go to the next service. So I have identified that this car does need brake pads, so I think we're just in time to save the disc. If I let this go any longer and then the pad wears out completely, then it will also destroy the disc brake or the rotor as well. So we're going to do these before it gets to that. So to do that, we need a few tools. So this is what I've gathered together of what I think I'll need. Certainly going to need a jack and jack stands. What you can do if you don't have these is use the one from the car. I'm going to be using this today because it's a little bit easier, but yeah, you can use the one that comes with the car. We're going to be needing a socket set. We're going to need a flathead screwdriver for sure, and then we're probably going to need a big pair of grips. I'll show you why for that later. I'm going to be using this impact driver. You don't need one of these, but it does really make life easier. But yeah, again, you can use the tools that come with the car. So this has a wheel cover. Hide the wheel nuts. Not all cars have these. So that just pops off like that, and then we reveal the bolts. I'll get my socket. Let's say this is a 19mm just by looking. I've done this a few times. And then I need that one. So this tool should come with the car as well, so you don't necessarily need this, but you will need a socket set for later when we actually do the brakes. So before I do anything like lifting the car up, I'm going to slightly loosen the wheel nut. Not too much, just a little bit, whilst the car is on the ground. And now what I should say is the car should be on as flat surface as possible. This is as flat as possible as I have today. It's on the street, it's on a little bit of a hill. And then what we want to make sure is that we're in park or in gear if it's a manual, and then the handbrake is on. And then the handbrake operates on the rear of the car, and we're going to be lifting the rear of the car, so that's not going to be much use. So we need to stop the front wheels from rolling, so I'm going to put some wood underneath both sides. So you could just use any old piece of wood, and we're going to put it under there like that, or even better, if you've got some wheel chocks, which I do, we're going to use these today. So because I'm on a downhill here, I've only put the chocks behind because I'm only going to be making the car level, so it's not going to go forward. But if you were jacking the back up, then it's quite likely that you're going to want to put something under the front wheel as well, under the front side of the wheel. Now our car is secure, we're going to grab the jack and jack it up. So it's best to identify where the manufacturer jacking point is on your vehicle. It's a good idea to reference your owner's manual, particularly if you're using the manufacturer jack, the one that comes with the car. Because I'm using this type of jack today, I know that I can jack it up on the rear diff here, so this low point. So I want to get it nice and centered in the middle there. This is not the best jack for the job. I do have a bigger one, but it's a bit of a pain to get out, so I'm just gonna get by with this one today, just doing a quick job. It'll get me there. So one wheel's starting to come off the ground. So the beauty of doing it like this on the diff, on the rear diff here, both wheels at the same time, so I can take both wheels off, get my brake pads out, and then I'm going to go and get them from the shop. So because this is a hydraulic jack, it's very important that you use some sort of wheel stand. So that's what these are for. These are called axle stands, and they are made just for this, to be able to safely be under the car. So there we go, like I've done there. I've managed to lift it right up to the axle there, put my pin in, and now this cannot come down any lower than it is. So if this gave way, then this is going to save it. If I was underneath, if I had my hand underneath the tire, then at least it's safe now. I'm going to do the same the other side. Have to go up a little bit more, there we go, lovely. Same place. If your car doesn't look like this with a rear diff, not all cars are like this. Passenger cars are a little bit different. You would be jacking up the car under here somewhere, under the side, and then maybe putting the axle stand on something nice and solid. You can say refer to your owner's manual, or Google it, or use AI in your favor. I'm going to lower this down onto both of the stands now, nice and slowly. There we go. So now the weight of the car is sitting on the two stands. It's nice and safe, it's not going anywhere. So I can now take my wheel off. What I'm going to do is take the handbrake off and actually also put it in neutral, because this is an automatic four-wheel drive, so you can override this. You don't have to get in it and put your foot on the brake and everything if you have an automatic. Little trick, there's normally a button called shift lock, which without it you can't get it out of park. But we go into neutral, handbrake off, do it nice and slow, check the car doesn't move anywhere, and now my wheels should spin. And check my wheel bearings while I'm here, and now I can use my impact driver to take the wheels off. If you're not using an impact driver, then take them off by hand, and this is going to reveal up my brake further. Keep those safe. Wheel off. You got yourself a seat. Classic mechanic seat, that one. Now we can see a lot more of what is going on. So this is our disc brake. This is the area that it brakes on, and you can see this little line here has started to form, and that is because in here on the brake pad itself there is a little wear indicator, and we can actually sort of see down in here. Let me get a torch. So not sure how well you can see this on the camera, but if we shine our light down in there, we can start to see the difference between the metal backing of the brake pad and then the brake pad itself is what we're looking at. And yeah, they're pretty low. They're not down to bare metal. You can also see here, when you look in through this little hole of the caliper with a bit of light, you can see the brake pad and the meat. We're going to see better when we actually take this caliper off. To take this caliper off, take this bolt out here. So that one there, pretty common on most calipers to look like this. You can either take that one, there's two. This part here stays fixed, and then this part here with the two bolts, one there, actually comes off. You can also rotate it and pivot it. So we're going to do that. I think actually I'm going to take the bottom one out and I can lever this up, because this is our brake hose, and if I take the top one off, I'm not going to be able to lever it out enough to get the actual brake pads out. There's a bolt here which I'm going to need a socket. So to me it looks like a 12mm. Grab my 12mm and my ratchet, and I'm going to undo that bolt anti-clockwise, lefty loosey, righty tighty. And once you crack it off, the initial bit is quite tight, but then once you crack it off, it's hand tight. And we take that bolt out, just that one, just a small little bolt there, pretty normal for a caliper. And then we need a screwdriver, and then we're just going to lever up in this little gap here between the brake carrier and the caliper, and just lever it away. And there we go, we got that pivot. I'm going to pivot it up, pop it out of the way, and then a lot of the time this is actually a little sliding pin, and you can just slide it out completely. Take the little rubber boot off, and there we go, our brake caliper is off. As I was describing earlier, when we put our foot on the brake, we are compressing hydraulic liquid, which then goes through this pipe. So this is a brake hose, we call it, and then this is a caliper. This is a piston. This is actually a moving part here. So when we put our foot on the brake, this piston moves towards us, so it makes the gap smaller. So then it squeezes these two brake pads together nice and tight, and while this is rotating, it actually clamps it and slows it down. So the harder you push, the more it clamps, the more it slows the brake down. It's quite a simple system really. So now we've got that, I'll put that somewhere safe. We don't really want to put too much weight on this. It's only a rubber hose, so we put that up the top there. And now we can actually take, we should be wearing gloves for this, because this is quite a dirty job, which I prepared earlier but I didn't actually put on. So I'm gonna clean my hands, pop the gloves on, because it's not very nice stuff. Get my phone off the floor. Now we can take the brake pads off. So they literally just slide out. If you can't do it with your fingers, then you can pop a little screwdriver in there in between the disc and the pad and just pop them out. Try and remember which one goes where. You can normally tell, because the one that's getting pushed by the piston has a little mark on it, this round thing. And then we can inspect the brake pad. So this is our pad material. So all of this, so there's actually plenty of brake pad left on here. Nothing really wrong with that. That is our wear indicator that we're talking about. So when the brake pad gets to there, that is metal, and it starts to make a squealing noise or a scraping noise on metal sort of thing. So if you're putting your foot on the brake and you're starting to hear a scraping, then it's probably that, either that or it's gone past that, and then you're rubbing on the actual metal bit on the back there. But that one is not too bad, but this one is a little bit worse. So that's much thinner than the other one for some reason, just the way that they wear. Sometimes these things need a little bit of extra lube, but actually that's pretty good, the way it's worn. But yeah, this one is ready for replacement, so we're going to replace them all, buy them in a full kit. So it comes with 4 brake pads, 2 for this side, 2 for the other side. At this stage we can inspect our disc. So this one, it looks kind of bad in terms of visual, like this kind of stuff. It's a little bit pitted. It looks like it's been sat for a while, or it got a little bit rusty at some point and then clean again. In terms of thickness, it's actually got plenty of thickness on it. Probably be the last set of pads. So these are designed to wear quicker than this, so you should be able to change your brake pads maybe 2 or 3 times before you actually have to look at changing the rotor, the disc. And then actually here on the disc itself, it says the minimum rotor thickness 16.6 millimeters. So you could measure that with a caliper. It's a little measuring tool that is designed to specifically measure thickness, or you could do it with a bit of a cruder method with a ruler or a tape measure, but it's not going to be very accurate. But there we go, we get a specific brake rotor thickness there. And I know that these are okay, and I'm gonna go and get some of these. All right, I got myself some brake pads. I went to my local car parts specialist just down the road, and literally just told them the registration number, and they matched the part straight away. It's a good idea also to take a photo of your VIN plate, just in case they can't identify it with just the rego. And now we want to check that they are the same. A couple of little bits in here, so we grab our old one before we open the packet, just check that they look same size, same shape, same features and everything. Yep, they look good. Let's open those up. Like I say, four brake pads, 2 on each side. So I went and got a really good quality 4-wheel drive brake pad, because this is a 4-wheel drive, and also it does a lot of towing. So these are really good quality Bendix brake pad, and they're all the same, so they're all identical. Sometimes they are sided, so keep an eye. That's why I said make sure you know which way that they come out. And then we know that this one was the one on the inside, because it has the round caliper mark, and that's the one that has the wear indicator. So it turns out this little line wasn't actually the brake wear indicator at all on this one. It was just that they were getting low and wearing in a certain way, and sometimes they just do that. But yeah, it was due anyway. So we need to put the wear indicator back on. So it comes with some new ones, so I'm going to match it to the old one like that and like that. So they literally just clip on, simple as that. And then yeah, that little bit of metal that sticks into the pad area is what the brake disc will start to rub on when the brake gets right down to there. This thing's also got a little marker that says replace when it gets to that level, when it gets nice and thin. So we're just about at that level now, so good timing. And then ideally, this is not absolutely 100% required, but it helps to be able to clean the brake, to clean the little part that the brake sits on. So the brake actually sits in a little metal carrier there, and it gets dust and dirt in there, so it helps to clean it. So I've got some cleaner here. This is actually methylated spirit, which is just an alcohol cleaner. So you can buy the specific stuff called brake cleaner. It normally comes in a can. And then I'm going to give my brake disc a little clean, get rid of any dust. That'll dry out on its own. And then this is copper anti-seize lubricant. So also, again, it's sort of an optional step. A good practice to do is to actually put it on the moving parts, and it helps the brake to wear evenly and not seize up, because this is a metal to metal connection. They only move a teeny tiny bit, but they do need to move. So just on this little tab here, the bit that actually touches the metal, we put a little bit of copper grease. So it's a really good anti-seize. We'll do that on that one, and then one of these, and then we can pop that back in. There's always slight variations in how these pop in, but they're all, a lot of them are very, very similar. Sometimes you have a pin type where you have to knock out a pin, but a lot of them, the vast majority of brake pads these days are like this, just literally just slip in. So I've got my one with the wear indicator on the inside. You just pop it into one and then the other, and that's it. I got both my pads in, and now the next step, because the new brake pads are much bigger, much more meat on them than the old ones, this caliper is no longer going to fit, because this piston comes out, and it stays out along with the pads wearing. So I need to push this piston back. So that's why we have these grips. We definitely need some of these, or you can use other things. You can use a clamp type, or you can actually get a proper tool that you can wind these back with, but these will do the job. First things first, we need to allow the pressure out of the system. So to be able to push this back, the fluid is going to go back in the system. So we need to open up the brake fluid reservoir, which is under the bonnet, almost always under the bonnet. Sometimes in vans where the engine is in the middle, it's up in the dash, but on 99% of cars the brake fluid reservoir is under here. So normally at the back, either that side or that side, most commonly on this side, because it depends which country you're in basically. If your steering wheel is on the right hand side, then it's going to be on the left hand side of the bonnet, the same side as where the driver sits. If you're in, say, the US or something, then your reservoir is going to be on the other side because the steering wheel is on the other side. And it looks like this. It's always attached to brake pipes. So these are all the pipes. So when you put your foot on the brake, when you're sat in the driver's seat, it moves things in here. This is part of the braking system. This is the master cylinder. So in here is a plunger, and then some seals, and then that pushes pressure through all of these lines and then down to your 4 brakes. This is an ABS system. So this is a clear sign that this is attached to the braking system. It also says on the cap here, brake fluid. So that's a really clear sign. So we want to just pop that lid off. Careful where you put that. Very much worth noting that brake fluid is corrosive to paint in particular, so make sure you don't drip brake fluid on any paint or anything. We're going to pop out this little filter. That's just to stop any dirt going in there when you put brake fluid in. And then we want to check that there's a little bit of room in this reservoir. So this is just a holding tank for your fluid. There's the maximum line, and we're down here, so we're sort of midway. Yeah, maybe midway between the minimum and the maximum, which is good. If it's already full and you're about to squeeze the caliper, the brake fluid level is going to rise. So if it's already full, then it's going to overflow. Then someone's probably topped it up thinking it's low, not knowing that the brakes are actually probably low. So if that's the case, if you're really full, then take a little bit out with a little syringe, scoop it out somehow, but we're going to be fine. And that's it, we're ready to squeeze that caliper. So we grab our grips, open those up so the jaw is bigger, and then I want to push on the metal bit and then something on the back of it that's nice and solid. I'm going to open these up a little bit more and then just squeeze, and there we go. You can see that the piston is going back. We want to push it all the way back in. It should be pretty much flush with the metal housing, and there we go. And we want to help our rubber along, make sure that kind of doesn't get in the way of the brake pad. Sometimes they don't sit very nicely. That's just a dust cover for the piston itself because there's another seal below it. And that's it, we're ready to go back on. So make sure your brake hose is as it should be, and then we're also going to put a little bit of copper anti-seize on our moving part. This little pin here is also a moving part to be able to allow the caliper to adjust. Some calipers have more than one of these. If it's a sort of performance vehicle, sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 4, so it might be ever so slightly different on your car. And we're going to put a little bit of copper slip on there and get this one back in the rubber and its hole, the rubber back on. Sometimes you just got to wiggle, and that's it. There you go, you can see that moves in and out. We're going to do the same on the bottom one because the brakes were wearing a little bit unevenly. A bit of copper helps things move nicely as they should do for plenty of years. And that's it. So our brake pads are in, nice and clean. The piston is pushed back on the caliper. Got the top pin back in, and now we're just going to drop it down and squeeze that one, and that's it. We'll put our bolt back in. I'll also put a little bit of lubricant on that so it can come out again next time. Righty tighty, do that one up, make sure that's nice and tight. It's only a small bolt, so you don't need to go crazy tight. If you're unsure about tightnesses, I've been doing this for 15-20 years, so I know the feeling of what a tight bolt should feel like. But if you're uncertain, there are actual torque numbers that you can look up. You can find out exactly what tightness your bolt should be, and there's a special tool called a torque wrench, so you can actually set it and it clicks when it gets to the right tightness. Both of those, even though I didn't do the top one. That's it. The brake pads have been replaced, so we can go ahead, put the wheel on. I'm going to put some lubricant on my wheel studs so the wheels come off nice and easy next time, and then we go ahead and do the other side. All right, now we've got both wheels back on, both brake pads are in. We're going to need to check the wheel nuts. So once it's on the ground, mustn't forget that, very important. Now another very important step within this process is once you've got your brakes back together, is to actually pump the brake pedal. So because we've pushed the piston back, we now need to realign those pistons and the brake pads. So we need the piston to meet the new brake pad. So to do that, we come to the car and we actually pump the pedal a few times. Try not to go all the way to the floor because that can damage the seal of the master cylinder. All you got to do is do a few little short pumps with your hand or with your foot. I find it more precise with the hand. You can really feel what's going on. And now that's a nice solid pedal. And now when we go to drive away, the brakes are already prepped, so the piston doesn't have to be adjusted whilst you're on the fly. So that's a really important step to remember. Pump your pedal before you go driving away. Check your brake reservoir, and now our brake fluid has come back up, nearly almost to the top, which is cool. Then we can put that back together. Pop that one in, a little bit of dirt there, get rid of that. Pop our lid back on. Nice, don't touch any paint. If you get any on your hands, close up the bonnet. And now we can jack it back up, take those stands out, and we drop it back down. Before I do that, I'm gonna put the handbrake on and put it back in park. If you remember, I put it in neutral. Handbrake on. Be very careful at this stage. Now there's no support, it's only the jack. Not to put your hand under the wheels, or if you're under a low car, then get out of there as quick as you can and then lower it down nice and back onto the ground. If you're using the standard jack from the car, remember to put it back in the car where you found it for next time. And now another very important step is to check the tightness of your wheel nuts or wheel bolts, whatever, if they're nuts or bolt. If you're using the standard equipment, obviously you're just using that. If you're uncertain about how tight, then again, it could be worth investing in a torque wrench so you can get it exactly right. I'm just using a breaker bar here, and I know exactly how tight a wheel nut should be. Reasonably tight, but you don't want to stress the bolt and potentially stretch the thread. I'm happy with that. I'll put my cover back on and do the other side. I always like to under tighten with my impact driver and then finish them by hand so I know they're at the right tension, and I like to go around once and go around again. Final feel, lovely. Happy days. That's it. I'm going to put all my gear away and then we're going to go for a little test drive. Take out my wheel chucks. Let's go for a spin. Test our new brakes. So when you get in, again, foot on the brake, start it up. And then it's worth again just having a couple of little pumps just to make sure you've got a nice solid pedal and it's not sinking, it's not too spongy. In the very beginning, whilst the brake pads and the disc, they get to know each other, can be a little bit of a light spongy feeling because the pad is not necessarily 100% flat on the disc rotor. And then also that the brakes aren't as good as they will be after a few hundred kilometers or so. So take it easy. Go slow, especially if you've done brakes on the entire car. On this one, we've just done the rear brake, so not too bad because the front does most of the braking. So we're not really probably going to notice much different. But yeah, worth going for a little test drive, checking everything is all good, and then just taking it easy on the brakes for a little while. Don't go and sort of overcook them really. You don't want to be stamping on the brakes really hard when you've just fitted them. We want the disc and the pad to mate together nice and slowly. So first brake press feels fine. There we go. We're going to go down a hill. Can't see a thing. Got the sun, dirty windscreen. But yeah, I'm just lightly braking for the first little while. Certainly the very first few kilometers, we want to be just going nice and slow. Take it easy. And then once they start to feel good, once you're confident with the pedal, once you know the brakes are working sweet, you can just kind of drive it as normal. Try not to cook them too much. Don't be going down any crazy mountain roads straight away and doing lots of braking. And that's it. Happy days. We've replaced the pads, we've checked the discs. We now know how to check our brakes and what to look out for. And there we go, another episode of New or Fix It. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope you learned something today. I hope you can check your brakes and know that your brakes are safe, or if you're inspecting a car, you know that the brakes are going to be good. Save yourself a trip to the mechanic and do a little bit of DIY and do some mechanical repairs and checks yourself. Happy days, happy motoring. Thank you.